Tamariki have arrived at the hospital.
There's an order there to uplift him, and that is what we're enforcing.
3 years ago, this shocking video showed Oranga Tamariki attempting to take a newborn baby away from its mother. It was yet another scandal for an agency long criticised for how it treats our kids in state care, a disproportionate number of whom are Māori. Tupua Ehrlich was one of those kids. In state care for a decade, he was physically and mentally abused by the people meant to be looking after him.
The abuse and trauma doesn't stop when you enter the care system, often it continues. And so what we have is a system that lacks in care. It's actually, it's not taking our children and young people out of dangerous environments and placing them into safe, loving, nurturing environments most of the time, like they claim.
Last year, a ministerial advisory board declared Oranga Tamariki weak, disconnected and unfit, and the government accepted all of its 25 recommendations. But a new bill promising oversight of the agency has been slammed by survivors, experts and every other political party. The bill, which passed its second reading in July, would get rid of the Children's Commissioner and replace it with a departmental agency.
Make no mistake, this is simply punishment to the Office of the Children's Commissioner for their staunch advocacy over the years. They've exposed a lot of the wrongdoings in Oranga Tamariki. And the government can say whatever they like, but they will not convince me that this is about anything other than them protecting their own reputation and the reputation of a system that is abusing our children. Yet the Labour government continue to steam ahead and say, we know best, when clearly they don't.
After getting things so wrong for so long, how can we put our child welfare services right?
State intervention is turning childhoods into sentences in an abusive system. We've got to start valuing the role of family, start getting serious about actually addressing the underlying issues that are leading to our children being unsafe.
Well, Aaron Smell's a journalist and he's written an article on this situation in the latest North and South. It seems like the system's broken, Aaron. Will this new oversight bill the government's come up with do anything to change that, do you think?
When I first looked at that bill and when I looked at some of the submissions, I was actually quite extremely discouraged because it essentially embeds a lack of accountability. It looks complex, it looks sophisticated, but in fact it doesn't actually give any bottom line about what the state's obligations are, what the liability is if it screws it up. And there's been recommendations that have come out of the Royal Commission that have said very clearly you need to have it in legislation that children in state custody should be free from abuse. And if they're not, then the Crown's liable. Now, the government has done nothing to implement those recommendations, and so you've got this new structure that's coming into place that doesn't do anything to actually protect children.
So, Aaron, sounds like no one likes this proposed bill by the government. How did we get it so wrong?
In short, the government has been listening too much to bureaucrats. It's been listening to the very institutions and people who messed this up in the first place. There are a lot of people, including survivors, who have told the government very, very clearly, particularly through the Royal Commission, what needs to happen. And for some reason, the government's rushing ahead and telling everybody it knows what it's doing when it hasn't even really heard the full story back from the Royal Commission. And I think that's being driven by people in the public service who don't want accountability, because if there is, they'll be the ones that'll be on the firing line.
Aaron, looking ahead to the future, what can be done?
Well, I think the first thing that needs to happen is the government just needs to stand down and step back from the legislation that it's trying to rush through. There's a whole lot of people that have said this is not going to work. This is going to put children at more risk. So that's the first thing. And I think, secondly, the government needs to take a broader view of when we talk about risk to children, what does that mean? It can't just be waiting till children are being beaten up before we actually step in. There actually has to be a whole lot of other things a whole lot of other questions asked about, well, why is this family in this situation? And whether it's housing, mental health, and we need to start fixing some of those things before we step in and take children.
Well, Aaron, thanks for your efforts to shine a spotlight on this. Nice to talk to you tonight.
Thank you.
It can feel pretty frustrating hearing that, thinking that there's this opportunity to change something that has needed change so badly, and it's just none of it is sounding right. But if, like me, you kind of feel frustrated and a little bit gutted learning about all this, I really do recommend reading Aaron's article, even just to sort of arm yourself with more knowledge so you know what's going on. It's in this month's issue of North and South.
Yeah, he's one of those old school journalists, and he has like painstakingly gone through every issue and processed it with his massive brain and then sort of presented it to the rest of us.
And then if you bump into Carmel Sepuloni, who is the minister in charge of some of this stuff, like at the cafe or something, you can hit her up about it. You can say, hey, I read in Aaron's article. This is not cool.